good. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. The time is now 7:01.
Recording in progress.
The time is now 7:01. We are going to begin our council meeting. It is Monday, April 10th. Can we have a roll call vote, please? Roll call. Just roll call. No voting yet.
Councilmember Bowles.
Present.
Councilmember Beer.
Here.
Councilmember Beckmeyer.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Vaterlos.
Here.
Mayor Big Stick.
Present. So for anybody who hasn't yet placed a permit on your windshield, if you're new to council or maybe just forgot, you'll find parking permits at the bottom of the stairs on the door. Just grab one, stick it in your windshield. You might get a ticket otherwise if you're parked in the parking lot. And Sarah, do you have any meeting notes you'd like to read?
For tonight's meeting, we're in person as well as have alternative methods of viewing and participating in the meeting. That includes watching on Comcast Channel 26, live broadcast on live stream via www.cityofpacifica.org/live stream, and also via Zoom, given the Zoom link, and or call-in and webinar ID as listed in the meeting agenda. The call-in number for Zoom for those calling in is 1-669-900-6833, and then enter webinar ID 811-5615-8241. For those wishing to provide a public comment, press the raise hand button or *9 if you're calling in on Zoom, and then *6 to unmute if you're dialing in once you're called upon by the last 4 digits of your phone number.
Thank you very much. I'll now read the land acknowledgement. The City of Pacifica acknowledges that we occupy the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone peoples, who are the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula. We honor the Ramaytush Ohlone peoples for their enduring commitment to Mother Earth. As the indigenous protectors of this land and in accordance with their traditions, the Ramaytush Ohlone have never ceded, lost, nor forgotten their responsibilities as the caretakers of this place, as well as for all peoples who reside in their traditional territory. We affirm their sovereign rights as First Peoples and wish to pay our respects to the ancestors, elders, and relatives of the Ramaytush Ohlone peoples. Councilmember Beckmeyer, please lead us in a salute to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
City Attorney, do we have a closed session report?
No reportable action.
Thank you very much. That brings us to special presentations. Tonight is, as far as I'm concerned, an especially special presentation. Our congressional representative, Congresswoman Anna Eshoo, is here to update us on what's going on with the nation. So welcome, Congresswoman Eshoo. It's so good to see you again, and I've been looking forward to this for some time.
Wonderful. Well, thank you and good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mayor Big Stick, to each of the members of the Pacifica City Council for inviting me to be with you this evening. It's wonderful and I appreciate it. I hope that the holy days that were celebrated were lovely for not only you, but for everyone in the community. And to people from the community that have tuned in, I'm really happy to be with you. First, I'm so proud to represent Pacifica. As you all know, the Citizens Redistricting Commission, when they drew the lines, and that takes place every decade, included the entire San Mateo County coast in Congressional District 16. And I'm thrilled that they did. Last month, I joined Mayor Bigstick, Councilmember Beckmeyer, Kevin Woodhouse, and the whole team of city staffers for a tour of the city's infrastructure needs along the coast, including the Pacifica Municipal Pier and Beach Boulevard Infrastructure Resiliency Project. And I want to thank the staff once again for working so hard to put it together. It was time very, very well spent with each one of you, but also with my staff and Congressman Kevin Mullen joined us as well. We talked about the city's work with the Army Corps of Engineers, including studies for two projects that will begin this year to address coastal erosion and beach nourishment along the shoreline. I know the city is hoping, counting on these studies building momentum for a larger general investigations study of the shoreline, and I fully support this project. At the beginning of March, I had what I would call my annual meeting with the Army Corps of Engineers in Washington, D.C. There's a whole team that comes in to meet with me. And I was very firm with them about Pacifica's needs and those needs being addressed. I made it very clear to them. So I think it's a meeting that they will remember. The Corps informed me, and I think that this is important, that they're changing how they conduct their cost-benefit analysis for coastal protection projects to better account for impacts to lower income communities. They believe that this change will directly benefit Pacifica. And of course, I will continue to push the Army Corps to ensure that this project moves forward. So as we, look forward to this new year, this new Congress, my top legislative priorities will be to work with you to keep moving the city's projects forward. We have to stay on these things. If you don't keep the pedal to the metal, these are huge, massive agencies with, many requests from across the country. But I think it's the squeaky wheel, and you can count on me to do that. Obviously, in the coming out of the last Congress, I want to continue to build on the successes of the first 2 years of the Biden administration. They're really extraordinary legislation, landmark legislation that we were able to pass. The Inflation Reduction Act to lower the cost of health insurance and prescription drugs is in place, and thanks to the law, most Californians who enroll in private health insurance through Covered California are eligible for a comprehensive health plan that costs $10 or less a month. That's a huge achievement and much needed, because we still have too many uninsured in our country and right here at home. Also, thanks to the new law at the beginning of this year, seniors on Medicare will have their insulin costs capped at $35 a month, so not a penny more. And they can also receive any CDC recommended vaccine, including the shingles vaccine, absolutely free of charge. So any of the Medicare beneficiaries that are tuned in this evening, make note of that benefit for Medicare beneficiaries. The new law also included the most significant investments addressing climate change ever passed by Congress, lowering our carbon emissions by 40% by 2030. That's a very ambitious plan, but we need an ambitious plan for our country. Many of these investments are tax credits. So our mutual constituents can use these tax credits to save money on electric vehicles, solar panels, heat pumps, and other energy efficient improvements to their homes. So I would encourage those that are tuned in to visit cleanenergy.gov to learn more about the specific tax credits that are available. We know firsthand, and Pacificans know firsthand, that you're literally on the front lines of sea level rise. And this legislation is essential to help protect the community from the impacts of our climate challenges. I'm very, very pleased that it's called the Omnibus Spending Bill. It's a very large bill that combines many others that passed in December, included $800,000 for resurfacing, the Sharp Park Priority Development Area. As you know, this critical funding will resurface several streets in the Sharp Park area, which has some of the worst pavement quality in the entire Bay Area. So that is that's an important step forward. There's no action needed on your part right now because the FHA, the Federal Highway Administration, is finalizing its guidance for funding recipients. And if you have any questions about this process, you can contact my staff. Obviously, Caltrans will work with you to submit the necessary paperwork to the FHWA. Pacifica has also applied for community project funding through my office to replace the railing of the Pacifica Municipal Pier in this coming fiscal year. Obviously, I fully support the project, and of course, the tour really highlighted the need for it. I've submitted that request to the House Appropriations Committee, and as soon as I receive their okay, I will get right back to you. So it's a part of my list of community projects in our congressional district. This is needed. I want to thank the city for working with my office to make sure that when I put in the request that you have provided the letters of support, all of the dotting the I's and crossing the T's to describe the project in its fullness and its a full need to the House Appropriations Committee. So I genuinely look forward to working with each one of you. I want to thank you for your warm welcome to me and to my staff anytime we've come to town. It has meant a great deal to me, and it is open arms, open hearts, just the warmest welcome. And, you know, as I look over my shoulder, you had Jackie Spear for so many years representing you. She is in a class of her own in her representation. So she's a sister friend, and I always say to her, I've got big shoes to fill when it comes to Pacifica, Jackie. And she smiled. She said, no, you'll get it done. You'll get it done. But I want you to know how much you're the warmth and the loveliness exhibited on the part of the community as well has really means a great deal to me. So off we go into 2023. We want to move these projects Fingers crossed on the community funding project and anything else that comes up. I think we all welcomed the beautiful weather for Easter and today. I think that what we've been through collectively has been almost biblical. 5-year drought, wildfires that California has never had to endure before, a flooding, and 90-mile-an-hour winds. So hopefully that's all behind us. I think the drought measures in the Bay Area are going to be officially lifted either today or tomorrow, sometime this week. But everything looks green and lovely. The wild flowers are out, and it's really it's a wonderful feeling. So thank you. You are wonderful and important colleagues, and I think you know the regard that I have for local government. It was local government, county government, that really shaped me legislatively, having served 10 years on the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors, which I just loved. And it was really excellent, excellent training, so to speak, to go to the Congress with, because counties in California are very powerful. They aren't in a lot of states, but they are in California. So thank you again for having me with you. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them. And I want to thank the community for tuning in tonight, too. It's great to be with you. Thank you. You're a wonderful audience.
Well, we are so fortunate to have you here with us and have you representing us. I'm going to turn it to my fellow council members to see if they have any comments. Mm-hmm. Lights are welcome.
Go ahead, Sue.
Please.
I just want to thank you for all your support, currently and in the past, because even when you weren't our representative, you helped us. And that means so much to us. And now that we have you, we look forward to working with you more. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Beckmeyer.
I'm going to echo what the other Sue said. And really, I just really want to commend you on your staff that we've had the opportunity to work with. They're so engaging and helpful and willing to assist us, you know, even if we don't know how to really ask the question or which, it's like, call me, this is, you know, we'll help you out. And I'm really pleased to see how well that's going too, because you're right. A lot of the issues in Pacifica are long-term. It's a long-term problem that's created over time and a long-term solution, and having you in our corner is terrific. So thank you.
Thank you, Mary. And thank you for what you said about my staff. 2 of them are with me right here in my family room. So they have big smiles on their faces. Thank you.
Councilmember Bowles.
Hello, Congresswoman Eshoo, and I'm sorry I missed you when you were recently here touring our coast, but I don't know if you remember, I met you when we were both campaigning by Mazzetti's.
Right.
And we had a good discussion about affordable housing, and I can tell you're such a compassionate person that really cares about communities and really the people that live in them, and I'm so looking forward to working with you. Thank you for your service.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councilmember Beer.
Hi, Congresswoman. It's so good to see you.
It's great to see you.
Thank you so much for all of your work for us and with us. You know, you've always treated me like your equal, and I really appreciate that. And I've been thinking about you lately and wondering how it's going. And I just wanted to say one thing, that, you know, you are such a kind, warm woman, and you are also fierce. And so we really appreciate that fierceness, because we need it, right, in a representative. So thank you for being that for us, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you. Wait till I tell my kids what the council member said about their mother. No, I deeply appreciate it. And, you know, we're partners. That's the way I view this. federal government is so huge and massive and complicated, and it's up to us to make sense of it and to move these issues through so that, look, we wouldn't be doing this unless we really cared about our communities. Each one of us in our public service is to help make life better for people so that each generation does better than the one behind it. And we certainly are not without our challenges. But I think I've said that probably to each one of you. I always think of a challenge as an opportunity. So I look forward to not only moving the ball, but getting these things done. So, I want to return the compliment about staff. Kevin Woodhouse is a highly respected city manager. I had the privilege of, and my staff did, working with him when he was the city manager of Mountain View in our congressional district. So you have a thoroughbred professional heading up the city staff, and we're all in good hands because we have him. So Kevin, thank you for your leadership as well. And I hope it was a good long weekend, holiday weekend for you. Does anyone have any questions?
So I'm going to briefly say hi to you also, along with my fellow representatives, and then we're going to turn it over to the public for a moment. Someone from the public might want to say hi to you also.
Okay.
And it's a strange circumstance because you're in front of me on the screen, and I know I need to look in that camera over there if I want to talk to you directly. Thank you so much for, I think our council member Beckmeyer put it well that even before you were properly our representative, you were already fighting for us alongside Jackie. And while we are sorry to not be represented by Jackie, you've already been a partner with us, and before you got here, it was as though you had already been representing us, and that you were able to so quickly pick up right where she was, because you were already there with her. And so seeing the strength of your advocacy on our behalf, making sure as we navigate difficult circumstances such as sea level rise and all that entails for a community that was built right here on the ocean side. Thank you so much for being so willing to work with us, all the more than you already have, and advocating for us so strongly. And with that, I'm going to invite the public to speak.
Let me just add something, because I think it's important, and that is that Kevin Mullen is a wonderful partner, and we help each other. Everyone has one representative, but if you can get two to be working on something, and at other times we engage other colleagues from the Bay Area to help helping each other. And that's always an eloquent and powerful statement to the executive branch working with them. So I want to call out Kevin, because he is a wonderful partner. We're thrilled to have him in the House, and I will always help him as well.
Thank you so much for that, and certainly he's been representing us a long time also.
Yes.
So it's charming to see on the local level our collaboration, and that as united we are locally, hopefully so too, eventually it can trickle up. I see Lynn Adams in the audience wishes to say hello, and if anyone else wishes to speak, please fill out a yellow card or just come on up, and I'll be happy to call in.
Hi, Congresswoman.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you. And thank you so much for keeping sea level rise at the top of your thing. I'd like to invite you, and thank you also for sending a representative to the Earth Day VIP tour and our celebration. We look forward to having your representative represent you here and giving them a good tour. Also, I'd like to just kind of challenge us, how can we help you reduce the amount of single-use plastic and plastic in general, as it's a big form of pollution, but also a big contribution to sea level rise. So I want you to know that we also are advocates, and when you need us, we're here for you. And all you got to do is put out the word, and I will get the word out to other people. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank God for advocates. It's how everything gets done in the country. A lot of people don't realize this. And actually, when I first went to the Congress, I didn't realize it. And that is that Congress, I thought, was a proactive institution, that we would, bring in great minds, listen to them, draw up legislation, bring it through. I don't know what got into me. Congress is a reactive institution. It's the push from the outside, from people in the country, from people in communities, just like Pacifica, that rise up with their advocacy. So the advocacy organizations, the community nonprofits, they play a very, very important role in helping to get things done in our country. So you'll have me knocking at your door for sure.
Does anyone else from the community wish to say a word or two or ask a question of the Congresswoman? Seeing no one, I cannot express to you adequately how grateful. Oh, we have someone calling in.
We have one raised hand. It's Irene Lee.
Ms. Lee, please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Irene Lee. I'm curious, what are the major changes that the Corps of Engineers doing to change the benefit cost ratio for environmental studies and projects?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's what I can tell you, Irene, is that it is, this is a new way to address how they do their cost benefit analysis. In the immediate past and for a very long time, they did not take into account the impacts to lower income communities. So that's what they informed me of when they met with me. And I think that is going to, that's going to play into and increasing the opportunities for Pacifica. And so I think that this is a real plus. It's a real plus. I can get some, that's about all, they just gave it to me verbally. There wasn't any paperwork about it, but if there's more to it that is perhaps online or whatever, I can certainly get it to the City Council to get to you. But as I said, this is going to benefit Pacifica and communities that are in the, in terms of the average income of a community, and the approval of projects is going to be very helpful. It's going to be beneficial.
There are no other raised hands.
Thank you very much. Pardon me, I'm not yet accustomed to the virtual world, as I will be. So as I was saying, I don't think I'm quite able to fully tell you how grateful that I am, and I think that we are, that you are here with us. And thank you. Thank you for your representation, and any other way I can say.
And thank you, Mr. Mayor, and to each member of the council. I love being with you, and you know what? Well, I'm only a phone call away, and we're going to be starting up our telephone town hall meetings in each community that I've done all the years I've been in Congress, and Pacifica is at the top of the list to start. I don't have the date with me, but I'll let you know when it's going to take place, and I look forward to speaking directly to Pacificans. They can ask me whatever they'd like. The meetings are for an hour, and I do these throughout the year, actually during COVID, I did them every single week to be helpful to constituents. So thank God that has receded, but I just wanted to raise a little flag and let you know what's coming. But we'll get the exact date to you. Thank you for your time. Most of all, thank you for your important public service to the people of Pacifica. And I'm so proud to be your partner in that work. So God bless all of you.
Thank you so much. We're so grateful to have you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, what a charming way to begin the evening. Bringing it back to council, we are on consent. Do any council members have an item from the consent agenda they wish to pull?
I don't need to pull an item, but I just wanted to alert you that I have a conflict on item 7, and I've spoken with the city attorney, and it's okay if I stay in the room as long as the item is not pulled. So if it is, I'm happy to step out.
And I'll, on the other side of a motion, ask city attorney to say a word or maybe before motion, unless you don't feel the need.
I'm sorry, say that again?
About that.
I have a question. What was the question?
I'll ask it on the other side.
If I might, City Attorney, do we need to take that item out of our motion
No,
so
we do
that
not.
the
No, we do
councilwoman
not.
can-
All we needed to do was to, Councilmember Bowles just needed to explain that she had a conflict on consent agenda item 7, and that she will be abstaining from that item. And as long as it's not pulled for discussion,
Okay,
then she does not have to step down off the dais.
but what about voting for the consent agenda?
The minutes will show that she is abstaining
Completely.
on item 7.
Okay, that's what I was trying to differentiate. Thank you.
Yes.
I do have one card. I'm going to open public comment for the consent agenda. I do have one card from Marge Davis for item number 7. Although it's in general consent comment, so, okay.
It is.
If anyone else wishes to speak on any consent item, please fill out a yellow card in the back. Bring it on up.
Thank you. So, good evening. My name's Marge Davis. Hi, y'all. I'm from Lindemar, and tonight I am going to be reading a statement by Summer Lee, who couldn't be here with us tonight. And this is addressing item number 7. So, staff and council, I am speaking on consent item number 7 regarding the rescission of the Vistamar project approval because of the city's failure to perform an EIR. Imagine a world where our Planning Commission and City Council listened to the dozens of public comments and testimony of 5 experts questioning the data in the Vistamar application and calling for an EIR, that the city listened to all of those comments and voted the right way. We would have avoided this costly lawsuit, but had the same outcome. Instead, one council member rolled her eyes and chalked all concerns up to just not wanting to see houses on hillsides, when not one comment contended that. Our current mayor, who was on the Planning Commission at the time, debated placement of trash cans and the parking spots for the driveway that was paving over the wetland, ignored the real issues raised, and approved the project. What the community and experts asked for was a deeper study because this property is burdened with landslides, poor drainage, a 53% slope which other jurisdictions do not allow building on, and a wetland. In fact, one neighbor feared for a repeat tragic landslide that had killed 3 children down a less steep slope in Pacifica not long ago. Then Mayor Martin had the courage to question the city attorney who feared being sued by the developer. Councilmember Beer voted with the mayor against the project, but they were a minority. The project was approved, and here we are tonight. You must rescind because a judge has agreed with the public, the experts, and the minority council members and are forcing you to do so. This is not the first lawsuit the city lost when the community asked for more transparency and fairness. The enormous loss to the ACLU for not providing parking while barring oversized vehicles during a worldwide pandemic and recession will cost taxpayers over $1 million also. My comment is more than a big "I told you so." It is a plea to review your decisions that are wrong according to higher jurisdictions and reflect on what you could do differently. Frankly, in most professions, you would be fired. Instead, in the housing element, the city slanders the plaintiffs behind this lawsuit as against all development, when the plaintiffs include some of the most ardent supporters of low-income housing in Pacifica. This was not a lawsuit by a few NIMBYs. It was funded by 75 donations from across town against bad decisions which further displace the people we need to live here, our essential workers. Vistamar was 8 luxury condos on top of hazards. For those who struggle to stay here, now their taxes are going towards bailing out the city's bad decisions. It's poor form to attack so many Pacificans when a judge rules them to be right. It's better to learn from mistakes. Thank you.
Thank you, Marge. Anyone else in our physical audience wish to speak? Emily, do we have anybody on the line?
We have 2 raised hands. The first one is Jim Creamer.
And before I ask Mr. Kramer to go ahead, I want to remind those watching at home or online that you can dial in at 1-669-900-6833, webinar ID 811-5615-8241#. Press *9 to raise your hand. It'll likely take, and then when called upon, you can press *6 to unmute. At that point, it'll take a moment for you to be unmuted, and we'll call you by screen name or the last 4 digits of your phone number. I'll alert you when you have a minute left to speak. Mr. Kramer, please go ahead and speak.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Good. Thank you for recognizing me. I'm also speaking on item number 7. I'm Jim Kramer. I live in Sharp Park. I really genuinely appreciate the city reversing the decision of the Vistamar project, even though it's under duress. It was under duress. Of course, we must be attentive to all relevant regulations, but somehow, for me, safety and environmental laws deserve special diligence. I feel we should actually, quote, err on the side of caution, unquote, not because we plan to err, but because so often these issues have unknowable potential consequences. In risk analysis, as a technical discipline, we favor the so-called precautionary principle. When I was teaching, I taught this as an example. Would you eat a burger in a joint where there was only a 25% probability that you would die of ptomaine versus 25% probability of an overcooked hamburger? The idea is that prudence demands a higher standard when consequences are serious. Landslides, fires, and CEQA compliance are more serious for me than, say, traffic or neighborhood character, although all have some level of importance. Finally, when the city gets legal corrections like this, I really hope that the city will strive to generalize and take guidance for the future, as these issues will certainly keep popping up. So thank you. Good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Kramer.
We have an additional raised hand, so 2 in the queue currently. The next one is Irene Lee.
What was that name?
We have
Irene Lee. Ms. Lee, go ahead. Please state your full name for the record. I'll let you know when you have 1 minute remaining on the clock.
Hi. Yeah, I have a couple of comments. One is just that with the series of storms that we've been having this year, that we definitely have to pay attention.
Ms. Lee, I'm sorry to interrupt you. This is
to landslide issues.
Ms. Lee, I'm sorry to interrupt you. This is comment on the consent agenda. Are your comments pertaining to any item on consent?
Yes, it's on number 7.
Oh, very good.
I'm
Sarah,
sorry. Yeah, and basically.
Sarah, would you please reset the clock? And I apologize for interrupting you. Go ahead. We're restarting the time for you.
Am I okay? This is on item 7. I do fully support that we need a full EIR to study the project, that it doesn't cause harm to other people, and secondly, that with the recent storms that we have and so many downed trees and landslide, that this is really a wake-up call to all of us, that we have to be careful what we're doing. And the third item is that we also need to make sure that we have whoever finally get approval for developing that site, that we consider affordable housing because that's something that we are required to do by the state. So that's all I have.
Thank you very much.
The last raised hand is Denise.
Denise, please state your full name for the record. I'll let you know when you have a minute remaining.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, my name is Denise Leonardi, and this is on item number 7, and I am asking you guys to say yes to rescind the Vistamar project approvals, no to the Planning Commission's resolution, no to the City Council resolution. I would like the City Council to respect the court's decision that the Vistamar project was not a good fit for building. It's a parcel that has a steep slope that is prone to landslides. Furthermore, removal of 6 heritage trees and 51 non-heritage trees is just wrong and unacceptable to that little ecosystem. No to 8 units, no to 4 units. Let's appreciate the good sense of the judicial system, wisdom, and thinking about the welfare of our community and our environment. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Emily, do we have anyone else on the line?
There are no other raised hands.
Bring it back
Oh,
to...
sorry, one just popped in.
Okay.
The latest raised hand is Danielle. Never mind, I think they're for afterwards.
I'm sure it's for general public comment. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak on this item? And we will close public comment and bring it back to council for questions, discussions, and/or a motion.
I move that we accept the consent agenda items 1 through 8.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Before we vote, I have a question or comment from Councilmember Bowles.
I'm sorry, I was trying to turn my iPad back on. I've got a couple of minor corrections to the minutes. So item 2, page 34. It's the paragraph that sounds Councilmember Bowles. It says it was more difficult to plan because you need an elevator if you're putting communities on the higher level, and that word should be amenities. And then there was another sentence on the next page that I couldn't make sense of, but I didn't have a chance to go back and listen to the recording. It just says, Councilmember Bowles thought that was a good idea, as well as for the quarry, what other people opine. I don't think that's what I said, but if you don't mind checking, I'd appreciate it.
So, Councilmember Bowles, are you asking that we pull the minutes so that they can be revised? Or are you suggesting, the options are you can suggest language to insert?
Oh, okay.
And then if the majority of the council agrees, then those changes can happen tonight. If you don't know what was said and you're asking the clerk to review the tape and clarify that, then the minutes would need to be pulled and we would bring it back at the next meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry. It seems like such a minor thing, but I don't know what it was supposed to say. Could we just strike the second half of that sentence, just say, I thought that was a good idea, and then strike the rest, and then that will keep it easy?
Well, the only people that can answer that question is the rest of the council.
Oh.
So the task here is for the rest of the council to either recall what was said, or to say that that sounds like what was said, or it's perfectly fine to just pull the minutes, have the clerk review them, and we'll bring it back at the next meeting. It's up to the council, essentially, based upon your request.
I don't feel the need to pull it based on that, but I mean, if you guys are okay just striking the second half of that sentence.
I'll change my motion to indicate that we strike the second half of the first sentence of Christine Bowles on page 35.
Perfect. Thank you.
And I second.
Well, it would just be
I don't
part
have to second.
when she's right. So Now your motion is to approve the consent agenda items 1 through 8 with an amendment to item, what's the item number for the minutes? 2. To reflect the deletion of the second half of that one sentence, and then the seconder of the motion accepts that amendment.
Was there a second change that you needed made to that, Allison?
Yeah, just the one word on packet page 34, from communities to amenities.
I don't know where that is. I couldn't find that one. Page 34?
Yeah, Councilmember Bowles.
Yeah.
Sarah, can you recite the changes?
Oh, here.
You can just say as a city clerk.
Communities, right?
Oh, got it. Thank you. So, Sue,
Yes.
do you know where that is? Packet, page 34, paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Communities to amenities.
Line 3,
Okay.
entities, right. What did you say?
Amenities.
Amenities.
Can I continue on where I was? And change communities to amenities on page 34, item number 2. And I so moved.
And does the seconder of the motion accept that amendment?
I accept the amendment.
So with those amendments, then the minutes on page 34 would read in paragraph 7, it was more difficult to plan because you need an elevator if you're putting amenities on the higher level. That's a statement by Councilmember Bowles. And the second amendment was to strike the second part of the paragraph on page 35. Councilmember Bowles thought that was a good idea,
Period.
as well as for the quarry, what other people opine. So we're just striking the second part after the comma of that line there.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
We have a motion and a second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar as amended, 1 through 8. Councilmember Bowles is abstaining on item number 7.
Any further comment or discussion? Please vote.
And the vote for items on the consent calendar, except for item number 7, is a unanimous vote, 5-0. Item number 7, the vote is 4-0 with Councilmember Bowles abstaining.
Okay, this brings us to public comment for items not on the posted agenda. This portion of the agenda is available for the public to address the City Council on any issue that is not on the agenda. Any person wishing to address the council shall be recognized by the mayor during this time, provided, however, that only items not on the agenda for that meeting may be addressed. We certainly appreciate it if all remarks are addressed to the council as a body rather than any individual member. Council members will not enter into debate with speakers under public comments on items not on the posted agenda. In other words, if you say ask us a question, we're not going to directly respond to you. We're not going to have a conversation. It'll just be a one-way you to us. However, sometimes we will make a clarifying remark depending on the nature of the comment we receive. So just because we won't be conversing with you doesn't mean we might not follow up depending on the nature of the comment. A maximum time of 3 minutes will be allowed for any speaker. Please adhere to the 3 minutes and try to be nice about it. There's a legalese that follows if you're not nice about it, but hopefully we don't need to get into that. So that having been said, I don't have any comments or any cards from the audience. If someone from the audience wishes to speak, I see Lynn Adams coming up.
Good evening. Thank you, council members. I'd like to thank council members and staff for getting us through the first 3 months of this year. And now I invite everybody to take a breath, to get out and see the wildflowers and the native plants that are coming up. It's a beautiful, beautiful day. Beautiful weather we've had, except for today by me. But it is pretty special, and April's always a great month of rebirth. And it's a great day to celebrate. It's a great month to celebrate being outside. I'd like to announce and share my condolences to John Flynn, his wife Jerry Flynn, the first Pacific Beach Coalition and Pacifica's Environmental Family president, has passed away. And she was a force to be reckoned with, and she helped us to become a 501c3 and guided us and set up the stage to grow as it has grown. So we're definitely indebted to Jerry Flynn. Since it is April, since we can all get out and see the things, it's time to clean up. It's time to do beach cleanups. It's time to do city cleanups. It's time to clean up our shopping centers. And the public has responded and is all set and ready to go for Saturday, April 22nd from 9 to 11. I invite the public to join anywhere you can. Take a look on the website and see the site that means the most to you. And if none of them mean anything to you, get outside and do your street, please. I also invite them afterwards to celebrate at Lindemar State Beach from 10:30 to 12, along with a bunch of important people, very important people, doing speeches. We will have a VIP tour, including representatives from Anna Eshu's office, Josh Becker's office, Senator Berman's, Assemblyman Berman's office, and other people, including Kate Hucklebridge, who is the director of San Mateo, director of California Coastal Commission, including our city council members. We have city staff on the VIP tour, and it's going to be a fun time. And a mayor from Foster City, San Mateo, will be represented. Mid-Coast will be represented. A bunch of representatives, and it's an opportunity to see what all Pacifica does for Earth Day, in the hopes that we can spread this other places. We're kicking off tomorrow with the school assemblies, which we'll bring to all the Pacifica schools. And I invite everybody to join us for the action and the celebration at Lindemar. And if you can't make it there, from 10 o'clock on, we will have PCT covering us live. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Anyone else in the audience wishing to speak? Yes, please. If you would fill out a card after you speak. Thank you.
My name's Daniel Beckman. I live on Esplanade in Manor. Thank you for your time and your service for Pacifica. I appreciate it. I think City Council is very important. I come here just to talk about Esplanade in general and about some of the safety issues that you run into living on that street right now. There's, I'm sure you are aware of all the homeless that have moved there because of different reasons. And I have a 4-year-old, and walking down that street, every single day on walks with my dog, with my daughter, it can get very dangerous. At night, all the lights, I don't know if you are aware of this, but all the lights from the medical center right next to where the pizza place is, from there all the way down to the trailer park, all those lights, none of them function. So at night, it's pitch black all the way down that entire street. So walking your dog at night there is incredibly scary and dangerous, and it's not something I would want anyone to do. I don't know if those are timed. I don't know if they function based off of like a sensor, but I have gone out, over a dozen times, and they're completely off. And the only light you really have is from the post office. Some of the lights there are set up on a sensor, and so you'll have that little bit of a light. But I would just like to put it out there so that it can become something that is discussed by the City Council. I care about people having an opportunity to survive and and get help any way they can. I've worked with the Pacifica Resource Center for years through Pacifica Baptist Church. I've done a lot of things to help. I myself grew up very poor and use some of those services through my family. So I understand that stuff is necessary. But drug use, physical violence, dogs living in cars that are barking and are, it's obvious that those dogs aren't being taken care of. It's very frustrating that nothing's being done about that. It's now, it's been years now. I've lived on Esplanade for 5 years, and the last 3 at least, I've noticed this, and it's just having to call a police officer and have them, go there for something that's not necessarily an emergency, but still scary. I feel like I'm wasting their time, but I feel like it's an issue that should be addressed, and that's why I'm here today, just to represent the people on the street, and so that you're aware of this, and so that we can start to work on something that can possibly resolve this issue without harming anyone, and, as much as we can, in a respectful way. So that's it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Beckman. I have no further cards from the audience. Emily, do we have anyone on the line?
We have 2 raised hands. The first one is Danielle La Campagna.
And of course, if you're watching at home or online, you can dial in 1-669-900-6833, webinar ID 811-5615, 8241#. Press star 9 to raise your hand. When called upon, you'll press star 6 to unmute. Please state your full name for the record, and I'll alert you when you have a minute left. What was the last name?
La Campagna or La Campagne? I don't know how to pronounce.
Ms. Campagna, please state your name for the record and go ahead.
Hi, my name is Danielle La Campagna. Good evening. I am a member of Citizens for a San Mateo County Gun Buyback, a group that initially met with the sheriff in 2018 and asked that the county put on gun buybacks, and has initially raised funds to give out during the buybacks and now supports the buyback in various ways. But I wanted to let the residents of Pacifica know that there will be an anonymous gun buyback in San Mateo County on Saturday, May 6th from 10 to 2 o'clock in South San Francisco on 1050 Mission Road. And I thank the city clerk's office for helping to print some flyers that are there with you tonight. And this event is anonymous. Please transport firearms unloaded and in the trunk of your vehicle. $100 will be given out for handguns, shotguns, and rifles, $200 for assault weapons and ghost guns, and there will be $50 received for non-functioning firearms. While our group assists in a few ways, the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office manages operations at the buyback. And the May 6th buyback will be held with the support from the Daly City, South San Francisco, San Bruno, and Colma police chiefs. During the previous 6 buybacks since 2018, 2,359 unwanted or unsecured firearms were turned in. My group is made out of consists of citizens who care a lot about giving that sort of an event and making that available to our citizens in our San Mateo County. And we also are really alert to the fact that no matter how much our hearts are very heavy with mass shootings, of course, that suicide by gun is 3.5 times more frequent in recent years than homicide by gun in San Mateo County. So reducing suicide risk by removing unwanted and secured guns is of utmost importance to us. And we have found that we have found that the majority of buyback participants have inherited their firearms. So our group has been very proud to partner with the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office to provide this safe, voluntary option to rid one's home of guns and firearms. Participants have been really grateful for a safe and organized event. Please help spread the word to residents, and please use those flyers and maybe put it out to your citizens through whatever kind of listserv or newsletter that you have. And we thank officials and staff for any help you have to give to promote this May 6th gun buyback. I hope to see some of you there. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you very much.
The second raised hand is Irene Lee.
Lee, please go ahead. *6 to unmute, state your full name for the record, and I'll tell you when you have a minute remaining.
Hi, I just want to thank all of you for letting me participate by Zoom. I cannot go to the public meeting due to health reasons, so I really appreciate that. And I'm also wondering for the meeting, like the Manor Overcrossing meeting coming up, and for housing element, if those could also be have Zoom meeting for those of us who cannot participate in person. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lee.
There are no other raised hands.
Okay, anyone else in the audience wishing to speak? If not, I'm going to bring it back to council for council communication. Before I do, I'd like to request from city manager as a starting point, if you could maybe have Public Works look into the condition of the streetlights on Esplanade. I'd like to be updated about that nearest ability. And if we could have that gun buy back and connect with Pacifica.
Mayor Big Stick, the gun buyback flyer is being promoted in Connect with Pacifica. We do have printed flyers in the back of the room for any of the audience members that wish to pick one up.
Wonderful, thank you so much. And maybe during staff communications, city manager, if you could address whether or not we're able to have Zoom for the Manor Overcrossing meeting. So we'll do council communications at this point. Is this you?
Not by choice.
Anyone, council members wishing to speak? Start with Councilmember Beer.
Sure, I'll start us off. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming tonight, and thank you for alerting us about the lights on Esplanade and the issues there. It's really important that we got that information, so thank you so much. This past couple weeks has been a little quiet, which is good, because the next 2 weeks are super busy. And so, you know, having a little spring break and some time to not have as many evening meetings has been appreciated. I did attend the Coast Pride Board meeting, and we are planning Pride events in Pescadero, Half Moon Bay, and Pacifica. We're also going to be having a regional safety meeting as part of the planning process for those events, so that we have a regional approach to how we'll have our law enforcement and, yeah, safety in general at our Pride events. And so that's always really good. And then we had the Pacifica Pride planning meeting at this, like, a day apart. So it was 2 days of Pride, which is awesome. And just so you know, the Pacifica Pride is on June 3rd. The parade's from 11 to 12. The festival is from 11:30 to 2 at IBL. The parade's going to go down Palmetto. We're very excited. There's so many businesses that are going to be participating and people. We're having a dual fundraising event this Sunday, April 16th. Sharp Park Sirens are going to be at Table Wine from 2 to 5 p.m. And the Pirates of Manor will be at Pedro Point Brewing from 5 to 8. And so they're making a competition of the fundraising events for Pacifica Pride. It's really fun, very innovative, and I'm looking forward to that a lot. PCT Open House is on April 15th. Please come out and see all the great things that PCT provides for our community. I just wanted to really quickly tell Marty that I'm really sorry that we weren't able to get your proclamation to you at this meeting, but we will get one to you, and I will try to have it for your open house. So I got you, Marty. We have our strategic planning meeting tomorrow. We had our Pacifica Collaborative meeting, and through the Pacifica Collaborative, we've been doing a lot of talking about unity and love and what it means to combat hate in our community. And so the members of the Collaborative are going to be participating in a lot of events that are happening already. Earth Day, so thank you, Lynn, for Earth Day, continuously Earth Day, because that's also a point of unity, right? Because we're coming together for our planet. So thank you for that. We're going to be participating in the Pride. the Pride events. And then in September, during Peace Week, we're going to help host some talks about race with the Pacifica Peace People. So we're looking forward to all of those ways of participating in unity in our community. And I just wanted to mention that our dear friend, Carolyn Jaramillo, is going to be moving away from Pacifica. And so we are all going to miss her very much. So I'm hoping maybe we can get a little proclamation for Carolyn at some point. The work that she has done advocating for farm workers and down at the border and with Pacifica Peace People and Pacifica Housing for All. She is like one of the most fierce advocates we have in our community, and I've learned so much from her. So I thank you, Carolyn, and I look forward to sending you off appropriately. I think that's all I have.
Thank you. Councilmember Bowles.
Thank you, Mary. I've gotten to know Carolyn in the last couple of years too, and gosh, we're going to miss her here. Let's see. So I went to the Peninsula Clean Energy had a training for new board members, and so I went to that, which was really good just to understand their process and their operation and how they were set up as a community choice provider of electricity. And just all the amazing programs that they work on. I asked them a little bit about grid reliability and just, all the power outages that we've had in the last few months here, which is really, they're not in charge of the distribution. That's still PG&E. And just to share that they too are a bit frustrated with PG&E, though they know that, PG&E is also suffering a lot of staff shortages, and the staff that are there are working very hard. But they're very behind, and even in new buildings, I have a project under construction, and it's, I think they've been waiting for their electrical connection for over 6 months. They can't move in because PG&E is just so far behind. But anyway, that's not Peninsula Clean Energy, but they are doing a lot to help us move towards electrification, and they know that that's difficult for some people in the community, and are really working to expand their program loans that can be wrapped up into your mortgage, and or they said is yes, because building electrification, because things are demands on the grid. So I see a lot of missing to communicate. I got to attend the San Mateo County Sustainability Awards with Mayor Big Stick, which was really fun. That's honoring projects that are leaders in sustainability and electrification. And Group 4, the architects of our Civic Center remodel, won one of the awards for the Burlingame Community Center. So it was nice to see Don there being recognized. And it was nice to be there in person. My husband and I actually won an award there a couple of years ago, but it was just on Zoom. So that was fine. Thanks, Lynn, for sharing everything about. Let's go out. Yeah, I'm really excited that Kate Huckelbridge, the new director of the Coastal Commission, will be there, and she'll be one of the speakers as well. And the theme is really thanking all the volunteers. I mean, there's a core group of paid staff with the Beach Coalition. Thousands of volunteers that come here to our town every year. People here, but also businesses, and then they've been spreading in Foster City now, and Daly City, and other cities where they do regular beach cleanups, and trying to expand to San Mateo now as well. Most of us got to serve dinner to the volunteers for the senior program. And that was really amazing last week too. So it was fun to learn about all the various programs and exercise and classes and socializing, that's so important for our seniors' mental and physical health. But what really surprised me, this room full of volunteers, many of whom were seniors themselves, and we're just so excited to serve, and it was nice to recognize all of them, as well as Beth Phipps, who's now gone, I guess. That was her last week. She's done a great job. And then I attended the airport roundtable meeting, and wanted to report that there have been 1,626 complaints about airport noise from Pacificans just in the last 2 months. And what I've learned is that some of the increased plane noise is in the storms when the wind patterns change and the flights come in through here. But now, until the end of May, the airport has actually closed 2 of the runways, so the departures are also funneling through here more as well. So keep your complaints going. It's good to let them know. I was woken up at 2 in the morning myself last night. Again, we're continuing to work on getting a Noise 101 seminar to educate us about what we can do and how we can be involved in making that better. And then I was approached by the Pacifica Land Trust a few months ago and have been talking with some of their leaders, especially Ellen Nadeson, who's leading the efforts. They've found a grant from the National Fish that they're applying for that is looking at nature-based solutions to coastal resiliency. So looking at flooding and sea level rise issues and whether there may be parts of town in Pacifica that can be considered for more natural versus hard armoring approaches. So I've been talking with them, talking with Kevin, our city manager Woodhouse as well, and looking for ways and particular policies, implementation policies that are in the local coastal plan that the council has already approved and so forth. And I can read you some if you like. That would support the grant, you know. So this is something they're applying with on their own. If they can get the city to write a letter of support, then that helps the chances for getting the grant. And just to tie back to the Land Trust and Big Sur that I met with when I was at that conference, they were really the driving force behind that project there. And again, that was something that took 14 years, you know, from the very start to where things go. But so this is just initial planning, just to look at what some possibilities might be. And then a lot of it's about community building and outreach and really educating us all together about what can be done. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
I also had a slow week or two. I attended the city class on the Brown Act and reporting income. It's always nice to have a refresher. I attended the senior appreciation dinner we served, and it was really a lovely event to go to. And it's nice to help out people who are helping other people. I attended a Leadership Summit conference with Cal Cities regarding our conference we're going to this week to meet with legislators. And that's this week. And I want to thank Lynn Adams. Every day is Earth Day if we pick up trash every day. It's important. And I also want to say that I'm sorry that many of us are at the San Mateo County Progress Seminar that weekend and won't be able to attend. But we're there in spirit. And pretty much that's it for me for this.
Okay, now I'm pressing my button.
Councilmember Beckmeyer.
That's my light.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I had the most quiet 2 weeks I've had since July, I guess, maybe. I did attend the Brown Act ethics training, and I agree with your statement, very good. But you know what I will say? It makes all so much more sense now. Every time you have it, it's like, oh yeah, that, oh yeah, oh no, I could never do that. Versus when I first was elected and went to a meeting with the city manager and the city attorney and literally felt like crying as I left because I felt, not because you were mean, but because I felt so constrained. I felt like, but I just got, now I got elected and now I can't do anything. And really, it's reframing that and understanding, of course, we do things, we do them all the time, but being very, very mindful of what it is to have the public's business done in the public, to take into account, you know, there are those few items that are for our body, and I guess the Planning Commission too, I don't know, be appropriate for closed session, but how we need to do our business here. And that's why I'm taking a couple minutes of my time, because I don't have a lot to report, to say thank you for your patience, community, but you know, we need to talk to each other. And this is the time that we have to share with each other, because we can't necessarily call each other up. We could call one person about issues, anything that's coming before us, of course, which is almost anything in the city, depending on how you slice it. So, you know, it's just a really important time for us every 2 weeks that we have here with these mics on and that camera. So that's what I wanted to say about that. Pride meeting was great, very productive. Thank you, Mary Beer. I missed the Beautification Advisory Committee meeting, and that is all because I was out of town. And now that we have our change in the state of emergency from the governor, we have to attend meetings in person. And I was in Lake Tahoe because it was spring break week, and I had to get away for a little while. So I'm sorry about that. Beautification is near and dear to my heart. And one of the things that was nice is Teresa Sulzer, forgot how to say her last name, was welcomed to the BAC that day. That was back, you know. And I can say that if you've been driving by at all on Cabrillo where the bioswales are, there's lots of greenery in there. And it's known, but they pretty much flooded during all the rain that we had. So they're doing their job. I mean, they're catching water, but there's a lot of weeds in there too. So there's going to be a presentation at the Cabrillo School PTO to talk about partnership around that issue. So that's very exciting, and that's pretty much all. I'm waiting to hear back from Director Peterson and the city manager, and looking forward to how we're going to announce beautification awards. And that part hasn't been figured out yet, but I always mention it just because it's exciting, and I don't want to, you know, just overstep. But I'm hoping that the committee will be able to report that out to us soon. And that is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. I always begin my comments with remembering the war going on in Ukraine, and I do so because we are very privileged to be enjoying the measure of democracy in our country. We do, and so I'm keeping my eye to Ukraine because, not necessarily in a specific form, but I would like the peoples of the world to have freedom as they like, so that's why I start that way. On the 28th, I attended a Rotary Club meeting in the morning. They were kind enough to give me breakfast, for which they had me speak on what the city is doing in terms of climate action planning. I updated them on what we've been doing so far, and as we're going to be discussing, most likely in the not too distant future, how we're going to update our climate action and adaptation planning. It also triggered a lot of references to my awareness from being on the Peninsula Clean Energy Board, because the two are so closely intertwined. So thank you, Rotary Club, for having me. I attended it was a master plan update for Filoli. And if you're not aware of this, it's National Public Land Trust. And it's this really beautiful estate and gardens. On council, we've probably attended an event there at some point, but if you're not aware, it's just a beautiful national gem It's a place in our backyard to explore, and it's largely kind of one of those hidden gems, so I encourage people to find out if they don't know. But they're doing a master planning to upgrade the entirety of the site over a several-year phase, and it was really interesting to hear about that. And then I got to explore the gardens, which were just lovely. Later that evening, I attended the Sustainable San Mateo County Awards dinner with Councilmember Bowles. I was delighted to see that our Don Merkes from Group 4, who's also a resident of ours, had just won an award in Burlingame, or for their project in Burlingame, that is, which tells me that I'm very much looking forward to when our own Civic Center project is done, because this group is associated with award-winning projects. And I also had the opportunity to see our state Senator Becker and Supervisor Noelia Corzo, which was a treat. There was a meet and greet that I attended with David Horschild, who is the California Energy Commission Chair. It was myself and other members of Peninsula Clean Energy essentially updating him on what Peninsula Clean Energy is doing. It was an informative and helpful meeting. I attended that Cal City planning meeting for the Leadership Summit. At least Mayor Pro Tem Vaterlaus and I will be attending in short order. Enjoyed the volunteer appreciation dinner. I loved serving the volunteers, the seniors, and it was charming working under Beth Phipps for one of, if not her last event. There was, the next night, a Public Works Appreciation Bowling event, which really seems like a pittance of thanks given everything that Public Works has had to do through this storm season, and there's no adequate way to say thank you to the Public Works team enough. But it was fun to enjoy some fun with them, that they allowed me to bowl alongside them for a moment. And then, of course, Beth Phipps' retirement breakfast was this last Friday morning. Bittersweet, but it was a good way to send her off. I had a brief one-on-one meeting with Josh Becker later in the day, in which I found out that Thursday is his birthday, so I'll be happy to say now on behalf of Pacifica, happy belated birthday, Senator Becker. And later that day, I took a meeting with Mila Zelka, who is the district director for Assemblyman Mark Berman. It's kind of a meet and greet session, getting to know her better and helping her to get to know Pacifica better. It was quite helpful. On Sunday, I was invited by Tom Nibby of Holy Cross Lutheran to attend the Easter sunrise service at the Sweeney Ridge Discovery Site. It was early, it was cold, and it was spectacularly beautiful, and a charming way to begin that holiday day. Looking forward to the Earth Day celebration on the 22nd. Thank you, Lynn Adams. There's going to be a Boys and Girls Club lobster boil fundraiser this coming Friday. Please get your orders in. I'm not sure if it's by tomorrow or Wednesday, but if you weren't aware, it's a great opportunity to have a spectacular take-home lobster dinner, and you'll be helping the Boys and Girls Club. At the City Democrats meeting on Saturday, Jackie Spear will be talking about her nonprofit initiative, and it'll be wonderful to see Jackie again. And Councilmember Beer referenced the PCT open house from 1 to 5 on Saturday the 15th also. I plan on having proclamation in hand, but to hear you speak of it, we might have to wrangle over it for a moment. And of course, we have goal setting, the hopefully final goal setting tomorrow, and strategic planning tomorrow from 6 o'clock till probably around 10 o'clock. I'm sure City Manager will speak more on that. And we will adjourn the meeting tonight in honor of Jerry Flynn. That is what I have to report on. Staff communications.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor Bigstick, Mayor Pro Tem Vaterlaus, and council members, Kevin Woodhouse, City Manager. Several communications. First, I'll start off to say that I did have the privilege of helping to serve at the Seniors Volunteer Lunch. It's always a great event, and one of the stats that popped out at me, and I think I have the numbers right, but the seniors program, with the help of the volunteers, served 80,000 or over 80,000 Meals on Wheels last year, and 40,000 congregate lunches were served. It's an astounding number that program provides to our seniors in need. One announcement I want to make is regarding commission and committee recruitments. For the viewing public, we currently are recruiting for 2 positions on the Parks, Beaches, and Recreation Committee, and 2 positions on the Open Space and Parkland Advisory Committee, and we'll be soon announcing the need to recruit for 1 position on the Beautification Advisory Committee. These recruitments are due to close this Friday, April 14th. So for anyone listening, if you know someone who wants to take advantage of this great way to make an impact in our community and serve on these committees, please pass those along, and the information is available on the city's website, cityofpacifica.org. As mentioned, tomorrow night, 6 p.m. at the Community Center, we have part 2 of Council's strategic planning session, and the Council will be engaged in affirming the mission, vision, and values tackled in the first session, as well as looking deeper at the goals discussed in the first session and prioritizing strategies related to those goals. So it should be a robust evening, hopefully a productive evening, and then the idea would be to bring the final strategic plan back to Council in May for approval.
And you said that will be at the community center?
It's at the Community Center.
540 Crespi.
540 Crespi, 6 p.m.
Thank you.
As mentioned, the Manor Overcrossing Project Community Meeting is next Tuesday, April 18th, here in the council chambers. There was a question about format for that meeting. That is only an in-person meeting. The city only has the capacity to do hybrid meetings for Planning Commission and City Council meetings that are filmed by PCT, and where we have staff support for that. But in addition, that project community meeting is really an open house format where the consultant will give an initial presentation, which will be made public on the website following the meeting. But it's really more of a poster session and open house for members of the community to ask questions of the consultant. So there's not an intention to try to broadcast that meeting, nor can we do the hybrid format for that meeting. That completes my communications.
Thank you very much. Does anybody need a break before we go on? Okay. Yes? Okay. So we'll take a 5-minute break and reconvene at 8:35. Recess, that is. It's 8:36. We are reconvening the April 10th City Council meeting, and there are no public hearings, so we're going straight into consideration. Item number 9, the fiscal year 2023-24 budget planning process timeline, long-term financial forecast, and summary of future challenges. The proposed action is to accept the report and provide feedback and additional policy direction for preparation of the fiscal year 2023-24 budget. Can we have a staff report, please?
Okay. So, Mr. Mayor and City Council, so today we are continuing our fiscal year 23-24 budget planning session and discussion, and well, this is what we call our first budget study session. And we will discuss today budget timeline, budget philosophy and methodology, long-term financial forecast, and we'll touch base on some of the financial challenges as well. So let's touch base where we are in the process. So tonight, we are officially in the public meeting number 3 of the budget development process. You may remember that the budget cycle started with a mid-year budget review that we brought to you on council meeting on March 27th. So that was our starting point in the new budget development process. The council also held the first strategic planning session on March 4th, and as city manager announced earlier, the second meeting is scheduled for tomorrow at the community center. And tonight we are holding our first study session just to discuss our methodology, timeline, long-term financial planning as listed in this schedule before you. Once we receive your input tonight, we will return to you on May 8th. And at that time, we will present the complete base budget review, preliminary 5-year CIP program, and initial changes to the master fee schedule. So the calendar, as you can see, accounts for Planning Commission review of the CIP program for conformity with the general plan. So that meeting is scheduled for June 5th, and following meeting on June 12th will be our budget session number 3, and at that point you will discuss the entire budget recommendations and the proposed budget for your adoptions. And finally, the budget will be adopted on June 26th. Oops. For some reason, I can't skip the slide. Here we go. So let's just spend a couple minutes on the budget methodology that we are putting for you for this budget development process. Again, as I mentioned, we presented the current mid-year budget review to you at the last council meeting. During the mid-year, we projected revenues and expenditures and fund balances throughout the rest of the year. So this is our starting point or foundation for the upcoming budget. And once we receive your feedback tonight, we will finalize our internal budget instructions to departments this week. That we also continue using the modified zero-based budget methodology that we introduced to you last year. So we're proceeding with the same approach to the budget. And this is a systematic financial management strategy and tool that is commonly used by local governments to help achieve more cost-efficient delivery of public services. And part of the essential step in this methodology is development of the base budget as a key step in budget development process that, again, we will present it to you at the next meeting. And following the base budget discussion, any additions or reductions of the base services will be considered by you as future considerations in the budget study sessions in the future. Right. So let's talk about the 10-year financial forecast that we updated for this meeting for you. So it's attached to your staff reports, the attachment 1. I want to highlight that passage of Measure Y by Pacifica voters was a great accomplishment for the city in November 2022, as it managed to improve our financial outlook that comparing to what we presented to you a year ago. So the Measure Y transaction and use tax will breach the projected 2.7 ongoing structural deficit that we presented a year ago. Another piece of good news is that the preliminary fiscal year 23-24 outlook projects about 1.3, a little shy of 1.3 million available surplus, or actually delta between revenues and expenditures. And unfortunately, well, the good news end here, because, well, the ongoing challenge that we also showing in the financial outlook, that this outlook that is before you today is projected at the current level of services only. So it does not include any service enhancements or operational improvements. It does not include any labor-related assumptions or improved retention efforts. And again, I just want to highlight that labor negotiations are in progress right now. It also does not include any staffing level or organizational capacity recommendations. And finally, it does not include any ongoing general fund contribution towards capital improvement program. Again, complete the long-term financial outlook is presented in attachment 1 to this report, but here on this chart you can see that general fund revenues and expenditures are now aligned pretty closely, and actually showing a nice, well, the revenues showing a little bit, well, outpacing the expenditures at some margin here. But again, we will refine these projections for the upcoming year once we complete the base budget and present you the fiscal year 23-24 base budget with projected fund balances on May 8th. So as already mentioned, the upcoming budget will present a number of challenges for the Council. And over the next few slides, we will expand on those challenges. Well, the first challenge, as we listed it here, is a challenge in labor market and recruitment and retention challenges, again. We already shared this with the City Council in the past on several occasions, that we are currently in a very challenging labor market condition in Bay Area in general. So like many Bay Area agencies, the city has been experiencing critical recruitment and retention challenges. That translates into pretty high turnover rate and ongoing vacancy rate. So just to make this point, we have 10-15% ongoing vacancy rate at any given point in time. So that translates into 20 to 30 vacant positions that we have constantly and recruiting for. And I'm talking about full-time positions. And another challenge, that multiple recruitments sometimes are needed for those positions and critical positions. And that results in loss of institutional knowledge, a loss of time, and additional cost of recruitment. Again, as I said, sometimes multiple recruitments for the same positions are needed. And of course, the cost of bringing employees on board, including the training and onboarding of new staff, is also should be addressed as well. So this challenge exists partially due to the fact that about 1/3 of city classifications appear to be below market in total compensation, but the city has limited resources to improve the situation relative to market median. I'm having, okay. So another challenge is the overall staffing level and organizational capacity. Again, we shared in the past with the council that the city of Pacifica historically is staffed about 23% lower than comparable full-service cities. And again, this results in an unsustainable workload to provide core municipal services and also limited organizational capacity to execute new projects or service enhancements. And of course, the cost of bringing Pacifica staffing level to industry standards is pretty high. So here on the slide, we listed the table of sample positions within the city with the annual total 1 year compensation cost for them. And again, this is not a proposal to fund these positions yet. We're only showing them as a reference for your just analysis of the current conditions and the situation, just to illustrate the total cost of adding new staff. The next challenge, as mentioned before, ongoing funding towards the CIP program and overall increase the capital needs in our community. We will be bringing an introduction of CIP program to you at the next budget study session, but we already know that it will include 11 projects that we categorize as non-discretionary at the estimated cost of $1.75 million. And in addition to that, some additional priority projects may be identified by council or community that will need to be funded in the upcoming year. Again, the council may decide to fund the upcoming year CIP from available fund balances, either in general fund or other funds, but the point we are making here that ongoing long-term general fund contribution towards CIP will be required, at least in the future years. And for the city of our size, we estimate this as a required contribution of about $1 million a year. And finally, we want to list funding for any service enhancements and council priorities as another budget challenge. Again, every budget development process, we strive to include funding for council strategic priorities and new service enhancements to address all our needs in our diverse needs in our community. And as mentioned before, the second council strategic planning workshop is scheduled for tomorrow. The council will discuss and develop, prioritize potential strategies to achieve your strategic goals for Pacifica. And that work will later translate into the work plan for the upcoming year and essentially will be reflected in the budget discussion for fiscal year 23-24 budget. So that brings us to the next steps. Again, today we are not asking any specific recommendations or specific actions from the council. We just want to take your input on information that we're presenting today. And as I mentioned before, the City Council Strategic Planning Workshop is scheduled for tomorrow night. So when the council will develop the prioritized potential strategies that will be converted to the work plan, and the budget discussion will follow on those. And the next budget session is scheduled for May 8th. At that point, we will discuss the council strategic plan, priorities, present the base budget and the master fee schedule, and we'll bring introduction to the 5-year CIP program. And here we have the budget schedule again. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, and thank you for all of the hard work that goes into creating a budget for a city. Council, do we have questions? Councilmember Beckmeyer.
Really quick on that last comment, would you, in the course of presenting the CIP to us next time, the capital improvement program budget, will there be a chart or information about what our investments have from the general fund have been over the last few years? Because with regard to your comment about, for a city of our size, $1 million would be the norm, and it would be helpful to me to have some, context for that.
Yes, we can definitely.
Thank you.
Question or comment?
Just a question, just to follow up on the CIP. I was just looking at the Public Works website, and so we have a CIP already, right, that identified projects for a certain number of years. So I haven't gone back and relooked at that, but are the projects that are in that document what we're looking at still for this year, or will that be
So typically, when you look at the CIP budget, you look over the 5 years period, but you approve funding only for 1 year at a time. So what is coming to you in May will be recommended funding level for the fiscal year 23-24. And throughout this process, some things may shift a little bit. So it's not necessarily the duplication of the book that you see on the website. And Public Works is actually working on the budget development process right now. So they will see how the current environment shifts some of the priorities to, or what changed over the last year, I mean.
And then some of the CIP is in sewer funds that are separate than the general fund, right? So we'll have that.
Right, the CIP program will have all projects, regardless of where they're funded from. So the CIP, the sewer-related CIPs also take capacity of our Public Works staff to execute on it. So even though they have a separate funding level, they still take a lot of work and effort. So that's why priorities need to be defined here as well.
Okay. So just in general, and I'm sorry, it's partly because I'm new and I haven't done this process before, but like for example, I know there's a lot of interest in the community in doing a short-term rental review of the ordinance, and that's one of the things on the overall list that we'll be looking at last night. But we can't really make a decision yet about what capacity we have. That 1.3 million, it seems like there's a lot of different avenues that are asking for that same sum of money, right? So.
Yeah, and part of this will be strategic planning discussion tomorrow.
Right.
If there's no other questions for the moment, we can certainly ask them after public comment. So we'll go now to public comment. For those who are watching on the television or the web, please dial 669-900-6833. It's webinar ID 811-5615-8241#. Press *9 to raise your hand. When you're called by your screen name or the last 4 digits of your phone number, you'll press *6 to unmute. After you press *6, give it a moment. It sometimes takes a moment to unmute you. Please state your full name at the start of your comment, and I will let you know when you have 1 minute left of your 3 minutes. I don't have any cards up here. Does anyone in the audience wish to speak on this item? If not, Emily, do we have anyone on the line?
There are no raised hands.
Okay. So if no one wishes to speak on this item, I will close public comment and bring it back to council for other questions, deliberation, and direction. Councilmember Beer.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I have a question about the chart on packet page 300. And maybe I'm just need some clarification about what happened at our last council meeting, because we removed the 650,000, right, from Measure Y, but it still appears in this chart. So maybe I can just get some clarification around that and what that means for us moving forward in discussing that amount of money?
Let me get to the page 300.
And I could jump in while Ms. Carter's looking that up. But I think that's just representing our estimate about revenue incoming. So it's not allocated to anything, but we're estimating that amount of revenue from, this April, May, and June of this year. Is that?
That's exactly right. So it's listed under revenues.
Okay, thank you.
We are still projected to receive this money. Yeah.
Right. I guess it was really late when we talked about that the last meeting, so I really need clarification about that moving forward, so.
Yeah. And just to follow up on that, I wasn't clear in that same line item, there's a capital transfers of 655. So
Right.
so that's
no, that's our budgeted transfer for the year. So that's how much general fund pays towards the CIP program this fiscal year.
Okay.
So it has nothing to do with the Measure Y funds. So you approved this budget and there was no change to this during the mid-year.
While we're on the topic of Measure Y, we were looking down the barrel of a $2.7 million structural deficit. Because the good voters of Pacifica were far-thinking enough to approve that Measure Y, we will actually be able to maintain our city services. And we'll, as we go through this budget planning session through June, demonstrate how that's going to keep us afloat. But thank you, staff, for bringing that to our attention to put to the voters, and thank you, voters, for ensuring that Pacifica will not have that structural deficit. Councilmember Bowles.
I had a few questions. So one of my main concerns is staffing. There's the issue of salaries and that we're not paying comparable amounts, but also the number of people and that we have on staff, compared to other agencies. And I think it's going to be very difficult to, it looks like it's going to be very difficult to make a dent in that, given this budget now. So I'm just wondering if we're looking at other opportunities for increasing staff productivity. Like, for example, when I met with you, there were some software changes that were happening and some reclassification of when staff needed to do certain accounting so that would eliminate a lot of busy work that's maybe not quite as important, and or if there's like software, like for the planning department, that, could help improve efficiency so the same staff could do the work in less amount of time, right? So it wasn't a burden. Is that something that we're looking at kind of
we are always looking at service improvement level, but let me take a stab at it. So I've been with the city for 2 years. So the ERP project has been on the city's radar for the last, at least 5 years, I would think. And every year, so we've been allocating the funding towards the CIP to take it on. But again, due to all these challenges, specifically in my department too, there was absolutely no capacity to start this huge project up to this point. Again, we are planning for this program and planning for implementation of the ERP program, but all of these challenges, they kind of feed on each other, unfortunately. And that's why this work is so hard, and so hard for you to decide as well. But yes, absolutely, we are looking at service improvements and service enhancements, and you have a list of accomplishments that we've already done, and we presented to you every budget process, so we always see how we can improve and optimize our service delivery as well. But again, it's going to be a strategic discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Beer.
Thank you. So moving forward, will we have an opportunity to talk about the contract services, exactly what our money's paying for? So we can have a clear view of all the contracted services. I guess I'm asking because folks have been talking about an arborist out in the community. That's been a concern in the community, and it's specifically because my district has 1 million trees that are not very healthy. It's also a concern of mine. So because I'm not quite sure what all the contract services are, I would really like to be able to see a full picture of that.
And on that item.
Of course, not tonight.
No, not today. But on that item, we did receive a written public comment that indicated that the city used to have a staff arborist who retired. And so I don't know if a formal decision has been made to not hire a permanent person in that position, or if that's something that we're talking about, as part of our strategic planning.
So in terms of a summary of contract services, happy to bring together what we can. And it's important to recognize that's not just contracted staff, that's all of the various contracts for projects and more, as well as we have a contract city attorney's office, which is contracted staff, but includes in terms of what you're talking about there regarding an arborist falls into the category of staffing levels and the tension that exists between our current staffing levels and enhancing services with new staff and the cost of those. So any staffing recommendations we might be able to cobble together and recommend to the council. Will be providing that analysis of what's more cost effective. My mic just go out.
You're pressing the button.
Oh, there you go. Thank you. So we can provide that analysis. Clearly, it's more efficient oftentimes to use contract services in some cases and not in others. And that's a case-by-case analysis that's necessary on that. I think, was there a question about previous staff? So we had a staff member in Public Works who retired, who technically wasn't an arborist, I believe, but was doing those duties. His position has been filled, and the city is using contract arborist services. And if Director Peterson wants to clarify on that, she can. But we are using contract arborist services, and in this case, that's the most efficient way to proceed.
I see Director Peterson approaching the mic. I always favor the opportunity to hear from our experts.
Can I just ask a question on that? Or in terms of your statement, Director Peterson, if there's a way to clarify the qualifications and certification an individual may hold versus the name of a position that the city has as a designated position. Sometimes people serve different functions, and I just wanted to get some clarity on that, just because it does have a longer history, and I wonder if you could kind of round that out for us.
Sure. Thank you. Lisa Peterson, Director of Public Works. To give kind of a big picture perspective from the city, we do, of course, have a superintendent of parks. And at one point, we did have somebody within that position who, on his own volition and was not supported by the city and didn't get city money to do this, became an arborist. And once that person became an arborist, was asked to do a lot of extra tasks related to arborist services. Actually did, hear from him a bit. I think, I'm not completely sure, how excited he was about that kind of arrangement. But the point is that it was something that he, on his own volition, did go ahead and get that certification. The position does not require it. It's not in the position description. The position has been filled. As City Manager Woodhouse said, we did not have anybody who applied for the position that was an arborist, who ultimately, there were a number of people that applied, but not one of them did have an arborist certification.
Councilmember Beckmeyer, did you want to follow up on that?
Well, I'm turning on my lights, so you know that I want to speak.
I appreciate that.
You're welcome. So with regard to position control and the position presentation to us, can you help us understand, is that part of the city manager's presentation and targeted for May 8th? Or is that going to come as another part of the overall budget presentations?
Well, it's actually both. So we will be presenting to you the base budget report on May 8th, and that base budget will tell you exactly how many positions are included in the base budget. And I can tell you right now, it's going to be exactly the same number of positions we have now. So any additional positions or any reclasses or any changes in the position control will be brought to you as part of budget recommendations, which is in following meeting after that, because that's the service level change that you will be approving. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I see we budgeted 88,000 a long ways out on excess ERAF, and they're threatening every year to not give us excess ERAF, but yet we still keep it in our budget. Is there a reason why we keep it there?
As the council is aware, I think the 88,000 reflects the policy from the council to provide funding to our non-governmental organizations, and that policy is contingent on receiving at least that amount in excess ERAF. So if in any given year we didn't receive that amount of excess ERAF, our funding from that source to NGOs would, be in question. The balance of excess ERAF currently is by council policy, and it's varied from year to year based on priorities, but generally allocated to Fund 38, our disaster accounting fund for coastal emergencies.
Thank you for explaining.
Councilmember Bowles.
I'm sorry, I was trying to go back and find, because I didn't note a page number, but one of the questions I had was about pension liabilities, and again, forgive me if I'm just new and not quite understanding this, but I think in last year's budget, we put a few $100,000 into that, and what I read was that we should be putting in 3.8 million this year, which we obviously don't have. So what implications does that have that we're not catching up with our pension liability?
So as far as pension liability, we do pay some pension liability because CalPERS charging us for a portion of the pension liability in addition to the normal cost. But what we've discussed last year is during the budget development process is additional policy to fund unfunded pension liabilities long-term. So we actually contracted with the GovInvest, actuarial services, and we'll crunch the numbers, and we presented the policy to you to see how we can do what we can afford to actually make the difference. And the policy, right, so you cited one side of this policy, ideally, that would be great if we can fund it, but the minimum policy level was 167,000 and the change. And that's the piece we included in the budget, so that money we put aside to the irrevocable trust to continue addressing this liability, earn money, and be counted towards the unfunded liability. And the base budget will include the same policy level decision. If for whatever reason council wants to decide that adds a budget option to change this, again, that will become the enhancement to the service, right? So something above the base budget.
So just so I understand, so the 167,000 as a minimum, does that do anything to our longstanding
It does. It counted toward our long-term financial obligations. And that's the money sitting in city accounts on the side. We actually invest this money with PARS. It's a Public Agency Service Trust. That's what it stands for, yeah. And this is city assets. So we'll just setting it aside for this purpose. And it will be counted towards the unfunded liability. So we actually started pre-funding it for 2-3 years now. So this is going to be year 3.
And what's our total approximate unfunded pension liabilities? You can answer that at another meeting if not. If you don't have it handy, that's okay.
Okay, I'll definitely include it in the next.
But it's higher than the 3.8 million.
Yes.
Yeah.
So 3.8 million represents, I believe, 1.4 5 or certain percentage of total unfunded liability. Yeah. But again, when we talk about unfunded liability, it's important to realize that this is the future liability, right? So it's not payable in any given time, like this year or in upcoming 5 years. So that's, and we'll talk more about it as we close the year and close the books. So every year we actually update this number for you. But I will make sure we include some section on this in the next report.
Thank you for asking those questions, because I will say that someone who formerly occupied a seat here on this dais had a great command of all of the pension issues, and that's Councilmember O'Neill. And he would give explanation and ask questions and lead conversations on this topic. And as I was listening to your questions, I was thinking about kind of like the Brown Act. As you hear this year over year, it makes a lot more sense each time. And so if you could, Assistant City Manager, include that kind of round, I guess, give us the color, if you will, around that issue. It's something that's really, it bears repeating year over year. It may be for the public as well, who maybe didn't attend the meeting last year, or maybe they only got part of it, and then they hear it again and go, oh, okay, now that makes more sense. And it was just educating all of us so that we really get our arms around those, especially pensions, because it is this long future commitment, and we're trying to do a budget for this coming fiscal year. And so really understanding all of those nuanced and more challenging issues is helpful. Thank you.
And Mayor Big Stick, if I could, we will provide more information and elaboration about the pension liability issues. But since we're talking about it, I just wanted to provide that high-level viewpoint and challenge on it. So we know it's efficient and prudent to set up the trust fund to, as we can afford to put money into it and save that money, because that helps our future liability and it helps our financial condition for expenses into the future that we need. The policy challenge is finding that money to afford to put away, and the personal finance example is if you're not making enough money to cover your ongoing house expenses or living expenses and food, then you're probably not really putting money away for your retirement, right? And this is the local government version of that in a very simplified way, in case that helps. And so if we can find one-time dollars in any given year to put into the PARS trust fund, we would like to do that. And it's often been a budget strategy recommendation I've made over the years. The first was to set up the fund, the next was to try to put a little bit of money into it, and hopefully we can keep that trend going. But we do have a lot of policy budget challenges this coming year.
Any further questions, comments? Staff, do you have the direction you need at this time? All right, thank you again, Yulia. Thank you for all the staff who's been working on this. Thank you, Lisa, for coming up and helping us navigate Arborist. And with that, we will move on to item number 10, appointment of an ad hoc subcommittee related to commission and committee charter review process and the timeline for review of the commission and committee charters. Proposed action number 1, consider appointing a 2-council-member limited term ad hoc subcommittee to develop survey questions for commissions and committees as part of their charter review process. And number 2, confirm the timeline for review of commission and committee charters, including whether or when to consider formation of any new commissions and committees. Can we have a staff report, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Big Stick. Kevin Woodhouse, City Manager. I have a brief staff report. At the March 27th City Council meeting, the Council discussed and approved a process for reviewing charters of Council-appointed commissions and committees. And then during that discussion, the idea was raised to appoint an ad hoc committee to work with staff in developing survey questions for the commissions and committees as one of the initial steps in that process. So tonight, as mentioned, one of the actions is for the council to appoint a 2-council-member limited-term ad hoc subcommittee to work on those survey questions as we implement the process. The second item is that on the 27th, the council did not deliberate about a component of that report, which is a timeline for undertaking the review of the charters for commissions and committees. And so that's the second half of the conversation tonight, which is to consider the timeline. And there was some discussion about how it would be beneficial to phase this in order to, because of staff capacity constraints in doing this. And there's, if the council is going to phase in, the recommendation that I made, which is in the report, is to start with the Open Space Parkland Advisory Committee and the Library Advisory Committee and undertake that work by the end of June. And then by the end of September, focus on the Beautification Advisory Committee, the Economic Development Committee, and the Emergency Preparedness Safety Committee, Charter Review, and then by the end of December, Parks, Beaches, and Recreation, and the Planning Commission Charter Reviews. And that's the timing recommendation, but is open for consideration and discussion by the council. And then also a question was raised related to timeline is if the council may wish to discuss in the future whether or when to consider formation of new advisory committees, and the idea of an environmental sustainability committee in relation to the climate action plan was raised, or was also mentioned related to the youth advisory board and forming a youth advisory committee. Then this is another topic of discussion related to timeline, is that, when should, if council is interested in that, when should staff undertake the research and preparation of a report that analyzes the purpose, viability, and staffing impacts for future council consideration of whether to establish such committees. So this discussion tonight would not be about whether to do those, but in the future, when should that fit into the timeline if we're going to undertake that? And that completes my presentation.
Thank you very much. Do we have initial questions from council? Okay, if not, we'll open up to public comment. I currently have one card from Kimberly Finale. If anyone else wishes to speak, please fill out a yellow card at the back of the room and bring it on up. If you're watching from home, on television, or by live stream, please dial 669-900-6833. It's webinar ID 811-5615-8241#. Press *9 to raise your hand. When you're called upon by screen name or the last 4 digits of your phone number, you'll press *6 to unmute. It sometimes takes a moment to unmute, so just give it a moment. Then you'll state your full name for the record, please, and I will give you a 1-minute warning when it's 1 minute from the end of 3 minutes. Hi, please.
Good evening, council members. My name is Kimberly Finale. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I'm hoping I'll do better than the last time I spoke. I wrote a few things down, so I'm just going to read my notes here. I want to begin by just saying I'm a lifelong learner, and I don't think I'm ever going to be done learning. I'm learning constantly through reading, listening, and simply observing what is going on around me, which is why I'm here. Mostly just to observe, but sometimes I find that I even have something to contribute. This year, on a couple of occasions, while either in council meetings or goal-setting sessions, I have observed a young man who's passionate about his future and the future of this small coastal town that he calls home. He wants to preserve the local, abundant but dwindling natural resources which we all are privileged to enjoy. The future belongs to him, his generation, We must listen. We, us adults, are stewards of this land, which he and his kids and their kids will someday inherit. We are responsible for preserving what we can so that his generation and those that follow can continue to live and thrive here. It's our responsibility to hear him, to hear them. They are calling out to us, do something. We have a unique opportunity right now to do things differently than even our parents did. As a child, I was warned by my mother of the dangers of climate change. She was a journalist and she knew what was coming. Albeit slowly, I watched my whole life, people turning their heads, ignoring the inevitable, while actively participating in the Earth's slow but steady demise. Now the kids are begging us to listen. Let's give them a platform. Let's lift them. Let's lift them and amplify their voices. Let's lift their spirits and show them, not just tell them, that their futures matter, that we care about them and what they have to say. We care about them so much that we will follow their lead. For once, we must do everything within our power to ensure that Pacifica is a place where they want to stay, where they can stay, to raise their own families here at home. This is why I want to encourage you to form a new youth advisory committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Finale. I have no other cards from the audience. Emily, do we have anyone on the line?
We have one raised hand. It is Monica Mager.
Monica Maker, please press *6 to unmute, and then state your full name for the record. I'll let you know when you have 1 minute remaining.
Great, thank you. My name is Monica Maher. I'm a resident of the Manor neighborhood. I've been here for almost 10 years, and I've worked in sustainability and energy for just as long. So I'm urging City Council. I understand staff has a lot on their plates, a lot of committees to put together, but I urge you to find the time to figure out what it would take to create the Environment and Sustainability Committee as soon as possible. The items in the Climate Action Plan can't wait. It's kind of one of the most urgent issues facing everyone. And depending on the specifics of the committee, I look forward to joining it. As I mentioned, been working in sustainability for close to a decade. I currently manage the sustainability group at San Francisco Bay Area Rapid Transit, or BART. So happy to lend my expertise to this city that I call home. So just want City Council and city staff to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Macher. Emily, anyone else calling in?
There are no other raised hands.
And seeing no one else from the audience, I will close public comment and bring it back to council. I did have one initial question that I neglected to ask on the other side. City Manager, I know that we were discussing at the last meeting that we could even roll it out as slowly as taking them one at a time. And so when I saw the schedule, which makes sense for OSPAC and LAC based on them kind of being the reason why we're having this discussion to begin with, them being OSPAC and LAC having a pragmatic reason why we should be reviewing them sooner than later. But it seemed like this list might be quicker than we were discussing last time. Are you thinking that that would work better in terms of the staff time it would take to do it? Should we consider further slowing things? Or is this what it looks like when we take them one at a time?
I think if the council's interested in elongating the timelines, that's certainly welcome from a staff resource perspective. One of the aspects of designing this way is just to say we want to accomplish the work by the end of a certain date, the last month of each of those quarters. That doesn't mean that each study session or item, in other words, they're each going to have their own timeline, and they may overlap, or one may get done and the other start. Each of these commission and committees, for example, for September 2023, BAC, EDC, and EPSC involve staff liaisons from different departments. The city manager's office is involved in all of those, but the actual staff liaison is in different departments, so it's sort of balancing out that workload a little bit was part of the theory there. But if there's a more forgiving timeline that the council wants to approve, that's welcome.
What certainly seems to be the conversation we were having last time was there's not necessarily a sense of urgency unless and until there is a sense of urgency, as there are for those first couple of groups, but that we can take it as a nice easy pace so as to not overburden staff specifically. So I just wanted to start there. Councilmember Beer.
So it was my hope that by gathering information from our committees and commissions, we would be able to actually, we would have the data to show us, whose charter, maybe some of them are perfectly happy with their charters, and they don't want to review them, right? So it was, my point is to find out about their experience and how we see them moving forward, right? And so the piece about hearing from them is really important. It's important to show our timeline, right? By the answers we receive through the survey or at the study session. So I just wanted to say that the input that we receive from the committee and commissioners it's important.
And given what you're saying, it almost sounds as though maybe the appropriate time to flesh out a timeline would be after we receive initial feedback.
That's what I think, because then we can receive feedback, from all of them.
Take a quick temperature read. Is there consensus on that point?
I'm okay with that. I'm just wondering with OSPAC, because they've already been waiting for a long time, whether.
Oh, yeah,
we need to
no,
wait for that.
that one's already, I think, in the key. I think that would be the first one, regardless, yeah.
OSPAC and Library Advisory specifically are called out as there being a pressing need on both fronts. So I think that's understood at this point, unless there's a different conversation that's where we'll begin. But after that, I think what Mary and I are coming to is we want to get that initial read on everybody before figuring out what next steps would be past them.
What do you think about that?
I agree with what you're saying. I agreed with you 2 weeks ago when you brought it up. I think it's a good idea to get that feedback. There's a couple of just structural things that I think are challenging about LAC specifically and the Library Advisory Committee and the Economic Development Committee in terms of how the positions are called out and required, or because of the way it's written, specifically having, certain groups having a seat on those committees. And as a practical matter, making that work hasn't always worked. I'm not sure it ever worked for LAC, to be honest. And so,
for example, having someone on the chamber, from the chamber, sitting on economic development.
And from the EDC standpoint, and having served on it during that, for such a long time. So I'm okay. I mean, we're making it work in the meantime, but it effectively comes down to one less person on these committees than we think there is, because they're just not coming.
Yeah.
And they can't, in some cases, based on when the meetings are scheduled. It's a conflict with other obligations in the case of the school district. So, it's just a mechanical thing that goes beyond or is somewhat separate from the philosophical and practical feedback that we want to get from our committee and commission members. So those are kind of two different things that I see. So as I look at this timeline, am I willing to wait until the end of September to address the EDC staffing issue
if that's when we're going to do it, great. Or is there, you know, any benefit to just taking that one piece? Or is that fair to do? I don't know. So when you say, what do I think? That's what I think. It's very muddled. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know those issues, but I just want to say that the EDC is probably one of the key committees, you know, just looking at our budget. And so having them bumped up a little earlier to really review that might be beneficial. The other just broad comment is all of these committees, except the library, I don't know if, I mean, hasn't been meeting, but have a council liaison. So we're there to also listen and to help hear these issues. The only one that's not is the Planning Commission. And I'm just wondering if there might want to be a temporary council member listener for these discussions with the Planning Commission.
I don't think we can.
Maybe it's not legal.
I think there,
Michelle, were you going to say something?
Maybe Michelle can talk to that because we've discussed that before.
So we should not have a liaison to the Planning Commission, because if that liaison member is hearing a land use item that then is going to be appealed to the council, there's a question about whether or not that liaison member is conflicted out.
Gotcha.
I mean, I'm not saying they definitively would be, but that's an issue that we'd have to explore, and then it does create more questions that need answers. So that would be my caution to the council in considering that.
Is there a way, I mean, sometimes they don't meet at all, that, you know, if this meeting to discuss their commission could happen when there's not something else on the agenda?
Oh,
is that one way to?
That, you know, for a particular meeting on a particular topic that is not a land use item, that would be appropriate.
Right, so a council member could be there with them to help listen and to a conversation about their charter.
But I thought we were going to have joint study sessions where there was going to be discussion between the two bodies.
Right.
So what would the role, what would you be asking? The other thing, and I will just say this, with liaison members, it's hard to know what their role is. And I think it's been hard in the past for council members to understand what their role is. Are they an adjunct member of that body? Are they there to solicit input from? Are they there to provide input? I mean, it's something that the city manager and I have talked about before. I have even asked him, I will say, so what is the role of a liaison member?
That's a good question.
And so that's what I would say in terms of, you know, creating a new liaison. I wouldn't call them a liaison.
Yeah, I'm not thinking anything long-term. I'm just thinking, you know, as these conversations are happening with the questions that get established by our ad hoc committee, all the other committees have a liaison except for them. So just wondering if there might want to be a conversation.
And I believe that's the reason why there's no liaison to the Planning Commission in general.
I think that that's the purpose of our ad hoc for this item, that ultimately a liaison notwithstanding for any given commission or committee, it's the chair that's going to be leading that conversation. And okay, if the council liaison is there, then certainly my experience is we can be tapped for helpful information at any given moment in time. You know, often any particular committee or commission will ask us, hey, can you tell us more about XYZ? And certainly, you know, if we're sitting there while they're having this discussion, they might turn to one of us and ask for clarification on any particular thing. But largely, I think that that's the reason why we're trying to create this ad hoc that will then articulate what those parameters for discussion are, so that ultimately we can hand that off to any chair, irregardless of a liaison presence or not, so that that chair can lead that discussion. And I just wanted to dovetail off of what Michelle was saying about planning. I'm given an understanding of the sensitivity of land use to the point that as much as I would frankly like to in person show up at Planning Commission meetings, I specifically don't. And I'm grateful that the television is there by which I can watch so that I can inform my understanding of any given issue and then can bring up the YouTube video if I don't have time to watch it, but specifically so that there is any perception removed of a bias that could come up later. I try to err on the side of not even being in the room, even if I want to do something as benign as welcoming a new commissioner or something like that. I err on the side of not allowing perception to get away in that capacity.
And if I could chime in just with regarding liaisons, as the council may remember from the discussion at the last meeting on March 27th, there was a list of sort of other administrative matters related to commissions and committees that after review of the charters we can come back and visit. And the topic of liaisons and what is the actual role and purpose of a liaison was one of those ones that the city attorney and I think needs to be visited. One thought while I have the mic that I wanted to throw out there for consideration, because I heard the comments about starting with survey questions to get those maybe early in the process to each of the commissions and committees in order to hear back. Maybe there's a committee or commission that really doesn't think their charter needs to be reviewed that much, and it made me think that one of the most recent charter revisions was for the Economic Development Committee, as well as they took the extra step of council approval of their work plan. So it could be with EDC, and I don't know this, we wouldn't know until we ask them, but it could be that they're okay with the way they're structured in the charter and the event planning and all the great things that they're working on, but that there needs to be that one structural change about the representation that makes up EDC so that they can have a quorum, don't have quorum problems for their meetings. And so the survey, if done early on, let's say before June, for all the committees and commissions, could elicit that question, and then we could tackle that one-off as a pretty short item with them, right? So just a thought.
And further, the addition of Youth Advisory Board, Committee, Climate Committee, Sustainability Committee, then you start getting into the other committees like Fog Fest Committee. I mean, you could go on and on. You can add and add and add, but I don't know that we have the bandwidth to do all that stuff. I mean, those are maybe just have to stay separate committees for a while.
On the youth advisory, we received some public comment on that from the former chair, someone who's been on the committee for a long time, has a point of view, current chair. And so what I would like to propose on that, and I very much value that input, is for us to maybe have some fact-finding or, just an opportunity to hear from the director of PB&R around his intentions with the Youth Advisory Council. I know it had to go on hiatus because of COVID. And what is the whole public comment that we just heard tonight, so inspiring about youth and their urgency to be engaged. And so we adults or, council members or committees members that are telling versus listening, guiding versus letting them lead, those are really interesting perspectives to my point of view. And I would want to hear a lot about what the plans are with the Youth Advisory Board that we have now and where it's going before I decide, I think we need one. Maybe what we have in place is an opportunity to grow what we already have, and we really have the bones of, at least for that one. Environmental sustainability, a whole other issue from my point of view, and we can talk about that, I don't know now if we can, or some other time. So anyway, I just wanted to give those two observations in response to Councilmember Vaterlos.
Christina had her light on first, but was your comment about youth advisory?
It was.
Please go ahead, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you for the public comment. I appreciate it. And, you know, with my professional hat, that's what I do, is I lead youth councils, right? And so we do youth-led research, and they get to, you know, tell us what they want to work on and what's affecting them and how and what they're passionate about. And so that was my whole point of bringing up the Youth Advisory Board, because I know that the young people that I work with really want their voices heard. They want more than you know, just to be over here on the side. And I also realize that it takes a lot of staff time, and that before there was like a seat on Park Beach and Rec that was never filled, which is fine, we can talk about that. But I do appreciate the opportunity to talk about it, right? And to learn from Bob about what your plans are, and talk to the young people, right? We want to hear from the young people. I spend like 8 hours a day hearing from young people. So that's where my passion comes from. And I think that young people are ready to have their voices heard and to be civically engaged. And as a civic body, I think it's our responsibility to make sure that that happens. Now, maybe that's not the best fit at the moment, I don't know. But in order for us to find out, we need to get the information, and we need to hear from them and everyone else.
I agree wholeheartedly. I was actually given a article by a member of a community about how youth used to be more engaged in council activity. And I think that that's, frankly, pragmatically a helpful idea to hear what some of our younger folks think about the decisions that council's making and weighing in on them. Ultimately, we're trying to do right by them in the long run, yeah? So I agree wholeheartedly with what you're saying.
Yeah, and maybe there might even be another vehicle for us to do that, to get regular input from them. So it really is about having those discussions and seeing what comes of it.
Councilmember Bowles.
And just to follow up, I just wanted to ask, I mean, is there a restriction age-wise or anything for young people applying to be on our commissions? I mean, could a high school student apply, for example?
I have no idea.
That's a good question.
City manager.
City attorney.
Or city attorney.
I see Director Palacio hovering out there. Director Palacio has a lot of experience with the youth committee in San Mateo, and he can provide some information, and maybe related to an age criteria, although we would also want to run that by or come back with information about that. I think before Bob jumps in, I do want to say, again, the council here tonight, the goal is not discussing whether to do this or not, it's to raise the question about when would the council want more information back, because there's a lot of detail about what the current Youth Advisory Board does, which is not a Brown Act committee. If there's a group directed by the board, that would definitely be a Brown Act committee. It's a whole different thing. And what is the advisory capacity that the council wants and directs our committees and commissions to provide them advice on?
Yeah, so good evening, Mayor Bigstick, Pro Tem Varales, and council members. Bob Palacio, Director of PBNR. So I think what I would like to offer you is that please remember that there are like 15 to 18 members on that Youth Advisory Board right now. It's sort of surging. They're really impressive folks. We've got a meeting this Wednesday, and we're actually going to do it in this chamber so that they can get a feel for that. The only things that I would offer you is that if they're to be held to Brown Act and things like that, it is going to be very difficult for them to do many of the things that they do. Planning youth events, activities. Can you imagine if the council had to plan the J-Teen dance, but only 2 of you could talk? You know, it'd be very difficult for them. Mm-hmm. And so there are constraints that come with, you know, making them sort of that formal body. they couldn't text each other. There are downside to that. There are pros as well. I'll provide you with those. What I would ask is to make sure that when we do survey them, that they have all the information, that they understand what it would mean to formalize them in that way, and put those sort of constraints, as you mentioned earlier, to make them follow those. We need to be very conscious. It is not a best practice to formalize a committee of young people that wants to put on activities and events and things like that. It doesn't preclude us from talking about government and exposing them to government and bringing them here and having those conversations and asking the questions at our regular meetings and getting the feedback from them. We have an active PB&R commissioner, Commissioner Rodriguez, who attends all of those meetings. She's a liaison to that, and she's doing a terrific job in giving them some of those experiences. So I think there's different ways to do it, and I would want to give you that information up front so that you had enough information to make the call on the pros and the cons of that whole thing. What is it a good thing to do? Is it a bad thing to do? And you can make that decision, and then give them the information as well, so they could give you the feedback that would be most useful.
I really appreciate that. My groups do not have the Brown Act restrictions. They're just groups of high school kids who can talk to their school board at any point in time and make recommendations without a Brown Act constriction. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
That makes huge sense to me, too. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll just keep
Go
it.
ahead.
I know adults who have left commissions because of Brown Act restrictions too, that make things difficult. So thank you, Bob. I do want to advocate again for the sustainability/climate committee. We did receive two other, besides Monica's wonderful comment and offer to help. Thank you, Monica. We received comments from Cindy Abbott and, Margot, I believe, right? Sorry? Yeah, and another one, and then Celeste Langui also. And I think we discussed maybe having that discussion as part of the Climate Action Plan, which I believe is coming up at the next council meeting. Is that still the case, Kevin?
Yeah, we're working towards the initial study session about the Climate Action Plan update for the April 24th City Council meeting. I don't know if in substance talking about whether or not to form a committee at that point is part of that initial, because this is the sort of kickoff to understand the scope of the update process and set forth the timeline. So maybe all the research and information analysis about what the staff time impacts would be and the benefit and the cons, et cetera, would be a future goal during that update process for council to discuss.
And we talked a little bit the last time that, besides the Climate Action Plan is like a good kickoff for that committee, that, and that's definitely something that we'll be working on. But then there's, follow-up every year, to measure those, and obviously a lot of other climate sustainability issues that I think we really have a passionate community, and it would be very easy, I think, to fill those positions and to help the city, because we have a very small sustainability staff right now. And then I had mentioned to y'all before, and I believe City Manager Woodhouse is looking into it, but there's also the possibility of getting an intern for 11 months, for much less than a staff person. And then that person could be, the liaison without needing, a full-time, fully paid staff person necessarily. So anyway, I'm hoping that that's something we consider. And I know it's a committee that a lot of other cities in the Bay Area have long-term. And I mean, if it's helpful, I'm very willing to read, other cities' charters and kind of see what's defined and maybe bring some good examples forward, if that's helpful.
So aside, Did you want to make a motion or a suggestion? Did you want to begin the conversation? Oh, yeah, I was going to try and finalize the other. So aside from having a more robust understanding of youth advisory and climate action, were there any other commission or committee ideas that were floating around, or?
Did you ask? I'm sorry, what did you ask?
If there's any other committee or commission ideas that are floating around that we should make sure that staff understands before we move into the ad hoc discussion?
Not more than the ones we already discussed.
Okay. So it strikes me that you expressed a great deal of desire to be on ad hoc. Am I wrong in that? Okay.
Yes, please.
Okay.
But we need someone to balance the passion with, like, grounding.
I hear you. A member of the committee recommended that I might serve on the ad hoc as well, but I'm also open to other suggestions if anybody would like to work with Mary. And I'm happy to work with Mary if not.
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
I move that the council form an ad hoc subcommittee on the subject of committee and commissions, and that the members be Mary Beer and Mayor Tiger Jazz Big Stick.
With huge gratitude, I second that.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote.
That motion to appoint Beer and Big Stick to the ad hoc subcommittee passes unanimously.
City manager, when your ear becomes available again, it seems like through conversation we gave a substantial amount of the feedback that the second point of this was asking for. Do you need more clarification, a proper motion, a specific conversation we haven't had yet?
Regarding timeline?
Yes.
So what I've heard so far regarding timeline is to initially work with the ad hoc, well, number one, to tackle the LAC and OSPAC charters, work on that will commence with the goal before the end of June. And of course, they will need survey questions to follow the process, which the ad hoc committee will take that as their first order of work for those two committees. And then also perhaps for the EDC. But the goal of developing the survey questions is, some questions for all the committees and then individualized commission questions also. And that we won't determine the timeline for the remainder of the committees and commissions until we get that initial feedback from the committees and commissions. And I would offer that while we have the goal of these timelines, for example, by the end of June for LAC and OSPAC, that those are aspirational goals that we'll work towards. And then we'll determine the timeline for the remainder in the future. The formation of a climate committee will be at some point during the deliberations about the climate plan update. And what I haven't heard input on is whether the council's interested in formation of a youth committee, and when all of the information and analysis about that would need to be brought back to council, whether that's urgent or not, or maybe there's an evolution period for the newly formed YAB to be more involved and informed about council matters in addition to event planning, but they remain as a non-Brown Act advisory board formed by the PB&R department.
So the question of YAB might take an extra moment before we get there. The rest of what Kevin was just saying about timeline, simple nod, everyone's on board. Cool. With youth advisory, the first thing that occurred to me was, as we're developing our questions, maybe those questions, once that we develop, will be for our current youth advisory. And we can kind of go from there based on that feedback, which direction we might take it. I'm getting a nod from Mary.
Yes.
Okay, and City Manager, does that make sense to you? Okay, so we have consensus across the board on everything being discussed? Do you have what you need?
Yes, thank you.
Very good.
Yes, we did.
Yes, we did. So, item number 10 being through, we're going to be adjourning in memory of Jerry Flynn, first president of the Pacifica Beach Coalition Board. Did anyone want to say a word about Jerry before we adjourn the meeting? Okay. Just making sure sometimes we have personal stories to tell. So we're going to adjourn in memory of Jerry Flynn at 9:56. Have a good evening, everybody.